sorry, the connection is not good. We'll live with it. What was that again?
Is there going to be more books in your series?
Well, not well. The fairy story. The fairies will be in the next book, Adventures with the Mermaids.
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix is, like I said, she's the only person for several hundred years who's ever been able to communicate with the fairies. And at the end of the first book, she's leaving Volcano Island, and she's in tears because she doesn't think she's ever going to see them again. But in the next book, she will communicate with the fairies again. But what happens is it's summer. She's swimming off the coast of Hawaii with her friends at the beach, and someone calls her name, and she's baffled because no one should know should know who she is. She's referred to as Princess Phoenix by the fairies. But I'm not going to spoil how it happens, but basically she learns she's referred to as a princess of the fairies, not a fairy princess.
Mm.
She can never be a fairy princess, but she has been declared a princess of the fairies. So when someone calls Princess Phoenix, she's baffled because now that she no longer is involved with the fairies, no one should know who she is. And it turns out it's the mermaids. The mermaids do talk to the fairies, and the fairies have told her about Princess Phoenix, and now she knows that they exist. She has to keep it a secret about the fairies, because the fairies are afraid that if the humans find out that they're real, they'll hunt for them.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So,
these stories are basically the Fairy Queen, which is the first story, where she meets the queen and saves people and children from the volcano. And then it's the fairy city, where the city is being threatened with destruction, and she has to save that. And another is the fairy children, where the fairy children get caught on a ledge. And they tell her she's going to have to go up there and free them because the rocks are too heavy for the fairies to move. And she tells the fairy queen, I can't fly, I'm not a fairy. And she says, yes, you can. We just didn't want you to know it. So she actually becomes the first human being to ever fly with their own wings.
So cool. I love it, Al. That is so awesome. Really quick, tell us a little bit more about yourself, because I think it's been a while since I've had you on the podcast, and I don't know if I have some new listeners, and I don't know, I know that I've had you on the show in the past, but just, so everybody out there listening that might be tuning in that hasn't met Al Jacobson.
Tell them I'm available for weddings and bar mitzvahs. Basically, what happens in my life is I've been working on those stories. I do want to write a third one, which is going to be called Adventures with the Leprechauns. Like I said, Phoenix is pretty much an adult now. I don't remember, she's 18, 19, I'm not sure. But she's an adult now. So when she meets the leprechauns, it's not going to work out well for her. They want her to do something that's going to be against her personal beliefs and morals. And my own background, I did 3 years in Uncle Sam's Army. I was stationed in Europe, nothing glamorous. And but I did get what I always refer to as a all-expense paid trip to Europe. There I met my now ex-wife, and also went, did a little bit of traveling, got an overseas discharge, and did a lot more traveling after I got out. And I've always regretted I didn't get to Greece. Of all the places in Europe, I just wasn't able to get to Greece. And I had a great time there. When I got out, my then wife convinced me to go back to college. I did so. I got a Bachelor of Science degree. And I really have always enjoyed writing. The reason I got, this might be of interest to you, the reason I wound up writing the children's stories, I've written several novels, all of which I've not been able to sell. And I wrote an autobiographical book. A lot of people still to this day refer to the 1950s as the Fabulous 50s. And I wrote a book entitled The Fabulous 50s Stunk. And it goes on, or the memories of an unpopular kid. I was not a popular kid in school, from grammar school to high school graduation. But the 1950s, to me, were not that fabulous. And wrote a book called Washington Sunrise, where the Vice President of the United States figures out that the president is an alien from another world. And she sits down across from the president as the sun is going down in the Oval Office, pulls out a pistol, and tells the President of the United States, "You have till sunrise to convince me not to kill you." And I wrote another book called The Keys, which was about a plot by the Russians to take over the Catholic Church, in which case they would be able to handle all that money and all that power. And another, several short stories. I'm trying to get together about 5 or 6 short stories to see if I can put them together as one book. And I had a cousin. I say had. I'm not even sure if he's still alive. He's a lot older than I am. In fact, while I was still a little kid, he had already been in the Navy and served during World War II. And he was married and had 3 children. And he wanted me, if I was visiting him, he'd say, "I'll go tell the kids a bedtime story." So I do, and they say, what do you kids want to hear? And they might say something like, "We want to hear the story of Little Red Riding Hood." And I say, "You want to hear the real story? The story about Little Green Riding Hood? That's the real story." And I just kind of wing it, with a lot of nonsense. And another time I might be there, and I tell them stories, Purple, Cinderella's, The Princess and the Pomegranate. I'd always be telling them all these crazy stories. And they just loved them. And if they had friends visiting, and then I would tell them all the stories. And my mom, now, if you look on the books, you notice that it says written by Alex Jacobson, not Al. And the reason I did that is because it's kind of a tribute to my mother, because she said to me, all those books you've written, she said, every time you tell those silly children's stories to the kids, they love them. Why don't you write those down? Why don't you write down your children's stories? So I said, okay, I'll try it. So you put Alex on it because it was my mom's idea to write the children's stories, but to put them in writing. And so that's how that happened. And I've always enjoyed writing. You want to hear kind of a funny anecdote, Amelia?
Sure.
When I was, not too long before I left California, I'm a third-generation Californian. Not too long before I left California, moved out here to Colorado, I signed up for a creative writing class, one of the local JCs. And the first day of class, the teacher, it was crowded. It had to be like maybe 30, 40 people in this thing, and all adults. There were no younger people there. And she says, "Well, why did some of you tell you we're going to go around the room and tell how you got into writing?" Well, one after the other, these people are like, "Well, I've been writing this column for the Los Angeles Times, and all this here." And another guy, "I was a correspondent in Vietnam, and I want to write a book about that." And all these people have all these massive, long lists of their backgrounds, what they've done in writing. A lot of them were reporters. Some of the others were wrote technical manuals. All kinds of things. Just went on and on. And I was sitting at the way other end of the building, the room. So, I was among the last people they were going to talk to. finally it comes around to me and says, okay, now how do you get it ready? He said, well, actually, I just woke up this morning and I decided I wanted to be a writer.
I love it. No, seriously, that's the best.
After everybody had gone through all these litanies, and that was my writing experience. I just thought I'd do it this morning.
I was wondering if you had an opportunity to check out my new website.
No, I haven't yet. No, but because waiting on the call and all that, I didn't get a chance yet.
Oh, okay.
But I will. Have you got some creative writing there?
No. It's about orchids. And a lot of it is got a sort of a fairy theme to it. Fae. So
That's cool.
I thought you might be interested in checking it out.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance. I haven't gotten around to creating a website. There are ways that people can actually just take a manuscript, like I said, in some of the other novels I've written, and put those on the web, where people can download them from there. And, you don't have to publish them at all.
Oh. Well, I wouldn't do that. I think your first book about purple, you had sent me a manuscript that me and my son enjoyed, but this was many years ago. I mean, this was like a couple years ago.
You mean the Snow Purple story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing with the difference between Snow Purple and Snow White is that Snow Purple runs off, and she's living not with 7 dwarfs, but with 7 fraternity men. And at the end of this, and also unlike Snow White that you read about and see in the Disney movies, Snow Purple's not a good cook. And that's one of the things. She's taking care of these 7 fellows, and they always are complaining about her cooking. And in the end, all these stories, by the way, are told by the old steam engine. The old steam engine is the little engine that couldn't. And he's telling the little girl those stories. And every time she mentions a story, he tells her that she doesn't know the real story. So he tells her the real story. And in the end, like I said, the women, the female characters in these stories are very, very powerful. When Little Green Riding Hood's grandmother is attacked by the wolf, Little Green Riding Hood takes a Bowie knife out of her belt and kills the wolf. And when the woodsman comes to rescue them and breaks down the door, she gets mad and tells him, "You're going to pay for that." And the Princess and the Pomegranate, she does not do as the Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Princess and the Pea, where the princess had such tender skin, she could feel a pea under something like 50, 100 mattresses, whatever it was. And what happens is the princess gets up in the morning, and although there was a pomegranate under her bed, under the mattress, she says nothing. And so the handsome prince that wants to marry her, she tells him, this girl really is a princess. And the reason I know is because even though she was having a hard time sleeping under with the mattress, with the pomegranate under her mattress, she didn't complain. She was polite. She didn't say anything, and she felt that made her a princess. Not because she had the tender skin, but because she had courtesy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I was going to say, Snow Purple, in the end, does not save when she eats the poison apple. She isn't rescued by the handsome prince. She's rescued by Prince the dog.
The dog?
The dog is named Prince. And the dog, in fact, the prince's horse is named Snow White.
Mm-hmm.
So so the prince the dog saves the princess, saves Snow White, Snow Purple.